Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about a cost-effective IP camera. I know I talk about IP cameras a lot on this channel, predominantly in conjunction with network attached storage, NAS for everyone else, but today I want to talk about a little budget IP camera that I came across that when I did first hear about it, I was kind of like, wow, that is too cheap for a camera. Because a lot of the times when you see IP cameras, particularly for you home users out there, you do notice that the prices of them aren't exactly a smooth scale. A lot of them arrive at the 30 or 40 quid mark with almost no features, no functionality, no software, and are effectively just glorified web cameras. And then after that, they go to about 50, 60, 70 quid. And all of a sudden, there's this jump where it goes 150, 200, and then things go crazy. And it's the pricing of IP camera structures is incredibly diverse and incredibly confusing too. And I do have a whole feature video coming very, very soon where I'm going to break down different kinds of IP cameras to help you choose the right ones. But the reason I want to talk about this unit today that I've not even named yet, the Heimvision HM203, is because when I reached out to the company to explain their pricing structure, they didn't really give me much of an answer. They just said, would you like a sample? I said yes, and here we are. Because I'm going to be doing a software overview of this, but with all the other reviews that I've seen, and I'm sure you have as well, there's one key factor that keeps coming up time and time and time again, and that is that this thing is ridiculously cheap. It arrives in some places for 20 quid. I mean, I think on Amazon right now it's about $25, $30 for an IP camera that's got pan tilt zoom, it's got night vision, it's wireless, it's got support with localized storage and cloud storage, and it's got two-way audio. In real terms, there is no IP cameras out there at that price that give that. So really, there's two questions. One, how can something that cheap give you that functionality? And two, is it even that good? And that second question is what we'll cover in the software overview. This is the hardware overview today, where we're going to talk about what you get when you buy this camera, what's inside, and I'm going to talk about what I like and what I don't like, because it is worth highlighting that as impressive as the price point is on this device, there are some design choices about it that did not bowl me over as soon as I first saw it. I've only opened it up the once. I've packed it all up again for you guys here, so you will see some of the bags have already been opened, and I've got the full NAS compare review about halfway through that now. I'm just waiting to do the software overside of things before we get into this. But let's take a look at that retail box. Now, again, this is available online, predominantly on like Alibaba, eBay, and Amazon, and all the other big vendors out there. And it is not NAS supported. It is neither ONVIF or ONVIF, nor is it on any compatibility lists of NAS brands. Now, that isn't to say that you can't use it in a NAS. You can sort of use the NAS as a kind of directional point to send your recordings to, but you have to fiddle around with the software, where predominantly the device wants you to use one of two different kinds of storage system. One, internally you've got an SD card slot, and you can connect to a cloud service that they provide, which of course is a subscription service, which I think will answer one of those questions about the price of this device off the bat. Now, the Heimvision 203 arrives at that price point with those features that we talked about. Inside, we of course have got a bunch of accessories to play with. We remove that box there, lovely little pretty box that tells us a lot of information about the contents and what it does and what in some cases it doesn't do. Inside, we've got our first time installation and setup guide and some warranty information right there from the manufacturers. Now, unsurprisingly, the device arrives with 1 year of warranty, which is fairly standard for IP cameras that aren't at an enterprise level like your Axis and stuff like that. But I will say that the instruction manual for a brand that I've not really heard of, and you do kind of get a lot of brands out from the East where a lot of the time they're just punching out products real quickly and you end up with a foldable sheet of A4 that's got instructions in poor English. This is actually pretty damn good. I mean, if you have a look here, it's very, very graphical. Everything's in well-documented English there as well for people like myself that never took the trouble to learn another language. Self-shaming there. And on top of that, there's lots of information in this guide that's pretty detailed and graphical. Now, I don't know if I already touched on this, but just to play on the safe side, this is supported by a mobile application for iOS and Android, but it's worth highlighting that you can't really access this camera or configure it on a desktop PC or Mac system. You can access to recordings, and with a little bit of playing with the IP address, you can get a live camera feed, but you can't really configure it or see any of the options that the app gives you. So predominantly this is a mobile app only accessible camera, which again, not a huge surprise at that price point. And of course, this does help brands keep costs down overall. When you are looking at IP camera brands, you will find that maybe only 2 in 10 will ever have a desktop app too. It takes a lot of money to get those client apps all together and to update the configuration and present firmware time and time again. So a lot of them take the easy shortcut and get some of those template apps that are easy to just bash out on Android or something. So we've got the camera inside. Before we get to the camera, let's have a look at the accessory box. We've got a box here. Get that box out of there. Everything's quite tightly packed together. Here is our accessories box. Now, it's worth mentioning straight away, this device is powered with a USB cable. Now, there is a mains plug inside, and that mains plug, as you can see, is your standard, or in this case, UK plug. Of course, wherever you buy in the world, you will get your plug. Got a UK plug going into a USB port there, an A, and that A goes into a micro plug there on the end of this 1.8 meter cable. So, first and foremost, this is a camera that not only can be powered by this mains connection via the USB cable, but if you are near another device with suitable oomph of USB, maybe a USB 3 port, or some of the more modern smart TVs where they have used USB 3 on those ports, you will get enough power from those ports to support a camera like this. I can't really give you any precise devices that will give you that level of support because things will differ from device to device, but a lot of the more affordable IP cameras do arrive with this kind of power supply in mind. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to you. I think all of us, while setting up things like an Amazon Fire Stick in the past, have been, firing around trying to find either a plug like this or hoping beyond hope that the USB ports on our TV will power an Amazon Fire Stick. This is very much the same scenario with that. Also, this is an internal camera only. This isn't for outdoors. This isn't any IP66 type stuff. You stick this out in the garden and it rains, you've lost a camera. So bear that in mind. This is an internal camera only, and at this price point, you should be so bloody lucky. So you do have a wall mounting bracket as well, along with the guide and the means to mount it on a wall. Along with the brackets, you've got the raw plugs, you've got the works to attach this a heightened degree. The camera itself does have an element of pan tilt zoom that we'll talk about later on, but of course, if it's height you're looking for, you're going to want to use that. And finally, we have an RJ45 LAN cable, about 1 meter, that cable I'd say, and it's one of those slender, thin ones that you can kind of wall mount and run parallel with a bit of sticky. Again, not much I can say. It's a Cat 5e. You're not going to need much more than that. This has got an RJ45 port on it, and although the camera is both wireless and LAN connected on the rear, it's still nice they included that cable. A lot of brands don't. They will count every single penny. So moving forward, get that out of the way, we can talk about the thing you guys have arrived for this video for, the camera. Let's talk about what's good, what's bad, what we like, what we don't. So this camera here, arriving once again at about 20, 30 quid or dollars, depending on where you are in the world when you're watching this. It's quite a plasticky feel. I'm sure you can hear that. There, you heard that on camera. It's a plastic external chassis. That's not a huge surprise. It is a 1080p camera, but it is worth highlighting to get that full 1080p fluidity. You are going to have to lower that frames per second painfully low. I think it's around 15 frames per second to get that high res. And of course, you lower your resolution, you can heighten the frames per second on your recordings. On the rear of the device, we can see a speaker there that I'm going to talk about in a little while there at the top, along with the USB connection for powering this device and that RJ45 LAN port to connect this to your local area environment. Now, let's talk about the lens. This device arrives, once again, with pan tilt zoom support to a degree. It's digital zoom, not optical zooms, which I know will disappoint a number of you, but again, think of the price point. And it has a 355 degree rotation. That's right, why not 360? Easy, because it doesn't quite go to the end. It locks at the end, so it will be able to cover pretty much a whole room, but it just doesn't have the rotational kind of lighthouse rotation there. And that zoom is 4 times optical zoom there. Now, in terms of tilt, you've only got 55 degrees of tilt coverage. But what's quite odd about this camera, and I say odd, I quite like it, even if it is a bit creepy, it has a weird kind of eye socket motor. So when it's rotating up and down, it's not the camera that rotates 55 degrees, it's this eye in a socket. The base constitutes the pan, but the tilt is there. And if we tilt it all the way up, we can see that SD card slot at the bottom. So this is where we can install our SD card right there. And that allows us to have localized storage while the camera is recording. Of course, having localized recording on a camera is not ideal, because if someone steals the camera, they've stolen the recordings. And I think most people will think about that while a burglary or something's going down. On top of that, this does have two-way audio. It's got an audio in, that little dot there that you can just about make out on camera there at the top. And on the rear, you've got the speaker out, which is pretty good, even if the audio in and out are in a kind of weird back to front formation. And there's lots of things you can do with the app. Apparently you can do alerts and a high decibel alarm and stuff like that, which is pretty good. So overall, the camera, for its price point, is giving you quite a lot. Even at night vision goes up to about 15 meters with those LEDs, so 49, 50 feet or whatever it is. So it's a good camera for that price. But it's not all good. Let's be fair about this. Let's not just say what's good. Let's talk about what's bad. First and foremost, let's talk about the connectivity, because this is a wireless camera, the HM203, which is great, but it only utilises 2.4 gigahertz frequency. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be like, what? And I appreciate that. Not all of you know about this sort of thing. It's fairly dull, but the router in most home and office environments, be it the one that's given to you by your internet service provider, your good old ISP, or if it's one that you've purchased privately, chances are, if it's in the last few years, it has dual band frequency support. So you'll be able to support 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth and 5 gigahertz bandwidth. Now, 5 gigahertz bandwidth is much, much faster, but has a smaller area of coverage overall in the home. 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth is much slower, but has a wider area of coverage. And chances are your router will be able to speak to this device. However, when you first set up a camera for the very first time, it does not know your Wi-Fi password. It doesn't even know which Wi-Fi is your Wi-Fi. A lot of the time, devices have something called a WPS button. A WPS button is when you press it on one device, it sends a little signal looking for another device that says WSP. You click the WPS button on either end and they sync up. This does not have that. So in order to set this device up for the first time, you need that mobile app. You'll install the mobile app, then you'll look for the camera by looking for its own wireless connection. The camera will convert into something called wireless AP mode, wireless access point. That means that the camera, once it's turned off for the very first time, will send off a signal to say, I am my own Wi-Fi connection, find me. And then you look for it on your phone, you find the camera on your phone, and then when you find the camera, you can tell the camera to go to the Wi-Fi and give it the Wi-Fi code, and then it all connects. In theory. Because the problem is, most modern mobile devices are 5 gigahertz only, and this camera is 2.4 gigahertz only. And the result is the two devices can't communicate. So when setting this device up for the first time using the mobile app, you can't, in modern phones, use that app. Often your phone will be asked to switch into 2.4 gigahertz mode, and a lot of devices do not support that. So do not be surprised with this camera or a number of other budget cameras when syncing them up for the first time that 2.4 gigahertz problem crops up. Now there are ways around this. First and foremost, that LAN connection on the rear. Connecting the camera via the LAN to your router or switch will present it on the network as a manual cable, and then you can use your phone on the same Wi-Fi to find the camera, which is great. And then you can set it up for the first time, and then you disconnect it in the hope that the camera has remembered your Wi-Fi connection, which is great. But a lot of you don't want to do it that way. You don't want to connect this to your local area network. The camera is not going to be deployed in there. Maybe some of you can't even reach your router because you've stashed it remote. So setup can be a bit finicky with a lot of modern devices, and you do find that cameras that are dedicated 2.4 gigahertz cameras are lower down the pecking order at the price point. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of on this camera is that it is mobile app only. I like setting these devices up with a desktop user experience because I want to be able to configure it with other things. And if you are going to use the app will almost certainly feel rather limiting. Whenever I've used any IP camera brand or IP camera from any brand that has both a mobile app and a desktop app, the desktop app always gives me more options, more configurations, and more control in the back end because of the flexibility of the graphical user interface. Something a mobile app doesn't give you because it is designed to be chewable, friendly, big pictures, easy, which can be really irritating when you don't want it that way. But if these are not problems that you think you're going to encounter, this could be a great camera for you. The HM203 is a decent enough camera at that price, and I am looking forward to doing a software overview of it because in terms of hardware, for 20-30 quid, I cannot fault this device because if it does even half of what it says it can do, it is a damn fine camera. But let's reserve judgment for the software overview coming very, very soon. I'm going to be recording it just after this, but I think you guys might have to wait a day or two on that one. Let's see. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, do click like. If you want to learn more or stay tuned for the software overview or learn more about IP cameras in and out of NAS, do click subscribe. And otherwise, I will see you next time.